So I've been told that sometimes it's difficult to hear, so please let me know if I'm not being loud enough. What I'm going to present today is maybe going to be a good sort of starting point for the rest of our discussion, more deeper dives from the other panelists into specific case studies and the research that they've been doing. So basically, today I'm going to discuss a little bit about what's going to happen in Central Asia with regards to the dynamics of the terrorist and extremist threat after the caliphate. We all know that Islamic State has lost most of its territory in Syria, and so how is this going to affect the dynamics of the terrorist and extremist threat within Central Asia? Within Central Asia, we're faced with something of a paradox. Marlene wrote a piece just after the terrorist attack in New York in 2017, calling this the Uzbek paradox. And although Uzbekistan is maybe the most acute example of this, I think we have this paradox. We see this paradox across Central Asia. So on the one hand, we've seen between 2,500 and 5,500 citizens from Central Asia traveling to Syria and Iraq to participate in hostilities since 2011. If we include data that was given by the government of Turkey, of those who were stopped on the border, this number increases to around 9,700. In per capita terms, Tajikistan, with officially 1,900 foreign fighters or recruits to conflicts abroad, was the second largest sender of foreign fighters in the world on a per capita basis, second only to Tunisia. We've obviously seen attacks by Central Asians outside of the region that have one of the few times that Central Asia reaches global headlines. So we've seen attacks in Pakistan, in Russia, numerous attacks in Turkey, attacks in New York, all of which reduced casualties, all of which brought the attention to the region and brought headlines discussing whether the region was becoming a new hotbed of extremism and exporter of terrorism. So Central Asians have made headlines, unfortunately, in those ways around the world. But what have we seen within the region itself? Well, if we take the Global Terrorism Database published by the University of Maryland, which is an imperfect data set in and of itself, if we take that as the benchmark point, Central Asia is home to 1% of the world's population approximately, and is only accounted for 0.2% of the entries or attacks in the Global Terrorism Database. By way of comparison, the UK, which has a similar population, slightly smaller population, accounts for 1.6%. The US, 0.6%, has 4% of the population. Neighboring Afghanistan, just 0.5% of the world's population, and 9.2% of the world's terrorist attacks. So the threat within the region itself over the past few years has been relatively limited. Within my own research published as a Kennan cable at the Kennan Institute, I identified 18 attacks between 2008 and end of 2018. These were defined as attacks that were initiated by non-state groups, i.e. I excluded counter-terrorism operations, and all the attacks or incidents were labeled terrorism by the government. This data set of 18 even has some problematic examples, including the killing of the head of the local security services in Horog in 2012 that sparked the violence there, various other incidences across the region that were labeled terrorism by the government, but maybe had limited proven links to terrorist organizations and often had closer links to local organized criminal groups and dynamics of local politics. So within the region, according to this data set, 138 individuals have died. Very tellingly, 78 of these individuals were law enforcement representatives or state employees. Most attacks, unlike the attack in Tajikistan in the summer in which 4 cyclists were killed, or Western cyclists were killed in an attack that was claimed by Islamic State, most of the other attacks have been targeting law enforcement, including the 2016 attack in Akto Bay, where a number of individuals robbed a gun shop and attacked local barracks and local police. When civilians have been killed, it's often been as collateral damage. They've not been specific targets of these attacks. And within that 138, almost 50 of them are terrorists. So just 11 civilian casualties, most of them collateral damage. In terms of the layout of these attacks, half of the incidents have occurred in the region's most prosperous state, Kazakhstan, but over half the deaths have occurred in Tajikistan. Rather than being linked to transnational Islamist movements, most of these attacks, when we peel back and try and reveal what evidence is available because they're so politicized. Most of them are linked more to domestic, local political struggles, to corruption, and to dynamics of repression. So we have a paradox between the region that's hitting international headlines, disproportionately represented in the statistics on foreign fighters, but within the region, there's been very few, relatively few terrorist attacks. So what's going to happen to those foreign fighters that are remaining? And that's going to be sort of a question of discussion that maybe some of the other panelists will jump into. And what's the sort of, how is the threat going to evolve going forward? Now that angry, particularly young individuals from Central Asia are no longer able to go to fight in Syria and Iraq. So these are the best estimates that I could assemble along with Noah Tucker for a new project that we're working on with USAID. If anyone has any other better figures that they know, then please let me know. But these are mostly official estimates. Some of them are estimates from other groups. In the case of Turkmenistan, the data is almost non-existent. Someone, I think, after we published this report, questioned why we even included Turkmenistan. No one really has any idea how many Turkmenistan citizens ended up in Syria and Iraq. But if we take all of these totals, we end up with a figure of those remaining or unaccounted for, most likely unaccounted for, a figure between 800 and 4,000. Probably trending towards that lower total because there's also an undisclosed number of individuals who are being detained currently in Syria and Iraq. So what are those individuals going to do? Based on interviews with foreign fighters or ex-foreign fighters in Ukraine, conducted by Lila Mironova as part of a project that we published for Russia Matters at Harvard University, we came up with a number of different options and categories of individuals. So many of these individuals have moved to third countries, particularly Ukraine, and once they've got there, they can be divided into two broad categories. There are those who were disillusioned with what they said, or what they saw, in Syria and Iraq. They no longer are interested in fighting, and instead they want to migrate to Europe and sort of try and settle there. Another group within this group in a third country are still committed to takfirism, committed to conducting jihad, and are either waiting to move to a different conflict or are planning potentially attacks within Europe or to form cells within. This is a relatively small group that we could find. Another potential scenario, and something we're already seeing, is like what happened with so-called Arab fighters who went between sort of conflict zones in Chechnya, Bosnia, Tajikistan, and various other places in the 1990s. Will we see sort of these transnational violence specialists moving to a new conflict? So we've already seen various groups that were based in Syria and Iraq moving to Afghanistan, returning to Afghanistan. So we have various Uzbek-led groups and a few Uyghur-led groups who've moved back to Afghanistan. And we have something like 750 to 3,000 Central Asians, foreign fighters, with groups, particularly Islamic State of Khorasan province, which was founded as an affiliate of Islamic State back in 2014, operating in Afghanistan. We also have a number of Central Asian-led groups, including the remnants of the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, Islamic Jihad Union, and Jamaat Ansarullah, which is a Tajik-led organization. Groups which were originally affiliated with Al-Qaeda but have come over to pledge allegiance to Islamic State. But we're not seeing recruitment at the same levels that we saw back in 2014 and 2015, when there was really the heyday of recruitment to Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. According to the Tajik president, dozens of citizens, an unknown, undisclosed number, left from Tajikistan or from Russia, where they're labor migrants, to fight in Afghanistan. But only 10 cases have been reported in comparison to sort of hundreds of cases that were reported and documented publicly in the case of Syria and Iraq. In terms of messaging, we spent the last few days, weeks, spending too much time on the Telegram channels and other social media channels of some of the Central Asian extremist groups and Islamic State of Khorasan province, looking at some of their messaging and propaganda materials. On the right, we have various videos produced by Islamic Jihad Union, which split from the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan in 2004, subsequently sort of pledged allegiance to Islamic State of Khorasan province. And within these videos, as you can probably tell, they're mostly sort of focus on some sort of lecture by Rashid, ongoing prayer. There's some discussion of the political situation in Afghanistan, particularly the role of the United States and other foreign powers, and there's usually some sort of video footage of attacks. But in general, they look like they were made in very low budget. They look like they were produced sort of at a very low budget. They're not particularly engaging or interesting, and there's limited message specifically to Central Asia. On the left, we have videos from Islamic State of Khorasan province, and in this case, at the bottom, we have Abu Bakr al-Tojiki from the south of Tajikistan. On top, we have a gentleman from Margilan. But their videos, as you can probably tell, much higher production quality, focusing somewhat on operations, successful operations that they are conducting, but also on life as a member of the organization fighting in Afghanistan. So a lot of these two videos in particular just focusing on local activism within the community, sharing meals, brotherhood, community, etc., etc. Much like the videos that were produced by Islamic State in Syria. But what they lack, that many of the videos that were produced back in 2014, 2015, is specific messaging to Central Asians. Most of the videos are in Dari and Arabic, not translated into Russian. There's limited messaging specifically targeting Central Asians and Central Asian migrants in a way that we saw with many of the videos, both official and unofficial, produced by Islamic State in Syria and Iraq back in 2014 and 2015. Afterwards, they're not picking up on some of those grievances that individuals have against regimes in Central Asia through their sort of assertive policies. They're not picking up on repression to the same extent. They're not picking up on specific migrant issues in the way that some of the messaging did before. And in general, for various reasons, we've not seen the same level of recruitment and success that Islamic State and other groups in Syria and Iraq had back in 2014 and 2015. There's potentially a number of reasons for this. First, Islamic State in Khorasan province is somewhat in disarray. It's lost a number of its leaders. It's lost much of its territory within the country, fighting an ongoing battle with the Taliban and other, along with sort of Afghan government and coalition forces. It's not achieved the same success that Islamic State in Syria and Iraq managed to, which was a real draw for many people. As I said, its messaging isn't particularly, although it's more sophisticated than these other groups, it's not drawing on some of the same messages and grievances that Central Asians in particular have. And in some ways, it's logistically, the networks of recruitment and sort of facilitation of movement to Afghanistan haven't been developed in the way that, in the case of Central Asians traveling mostly from Russia through Turkey, across the border into Syria and Iraq 3 or 4 years ago, was well developed, well established. The same sort of network scheme hasn't been established with regards to Central Asians, many of whom have had to go from Russia down to Iran and across the border into Afghanistan, which is somewhat difficult, not as easy as it was back in 2014, 2015. So we've not seen that same level of flow. But just to finish on perhaps the question that emerges from this, and this is a question that we'll be addressing in a new research project being funded by USAID. And this is really, given that these grievances remain, given that there's still repression, corruption, assertively secular regimes that really restrict religious freedom to differing degrees across the region, what are young, angry individuals who would have gone to Syria and Iraq if they had the opportunity a few years ago, what are they going to do now? And so I think maybe something to focus on is the possibility for attacks that are similar to the attack that we saw in July in Tajikistan, where the individuals were radicalized online through social media and various contacts, didn't take the difficult trip to go to a foreign country. And sort of analysts need to think about in terms of, if there's not this outflow of for angry young individuals, what are they going to do next? Are we going to see any further? I think I'll finish there.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's zoom in on Kyrgyzstan now and on its young people, the vulnerability and resilience to radicalization, violence and extremism. And we'll have Emil Nasliddinov from the George Washington University.
Good afternoon, everyone. Might need to make clarification that I'm currently with George Washington, but a long term is my affiliation with the American University of Central Asia. Today I'm going to share the results of the research project that we have been working with recently with colleagues of mine from the Research Institute for Islamic Studies that is located in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. And the report is called Vulnerability and Resilience of Young People to Radicalization